My name is Eric Page Littleford, and I am ecstatic to be able to moderate this discussion around America's Seed Fund and Entrepreneur Support Organization collaborations. Um, when we're thinking about today's session, one of the things we're going to do is we're really going to delve into some of these different approaches how entrepreneur support organizations are taking to really enhance and propel new innovations and create new small business growth. Many of them are leveraging America's Seed Fund, but that's not everyone's path. So we're going to have a broad discussion today. So before I introduce the panel, I guess I'll introduce myself a little bit more formally and talk a little bit about America's Seed Fund. My name is Eric Page Littleford. I am the Acting Director and Program Manager for America's Seed Fund, which is comprised of the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer programs. It's the largest source of non-dilutive funding for our most innovative small companies. Right? I am here with the Small Business Administration. And what we're going to do is now I'll introduce our panelists. But before I do, we want this to be an engaging Q&A. So although I have a few questions prepared, I want you all to start entering your questions into the chat to make sure we're being responsive to your particular needs and interests. So to introduce our panel, let me start with Mary Larkin. Right? So Mary is the program manager for Barta, Barta's Accelerator Network. Before joining Barta, she was the co-founder and CEO of a biotechnology startup company developing bioengineered proteins to detect pathogens in a point-of-care diagnostic platform. As a founder, Mary participated in the Accelerator program and knows firsthand their value to early-stage innovators, particularly those who have extensive technical knowledge but little experience in growing a business. In her role with the Barta Accelerator Network, Mary applies her combined experience in research and entrepreneurship to support innovators and breakthrough technologies aligned to Barta's mission to protect global public health. Mary, thank you so much for joining us. We also have two other panelists who are actually very close to me in our program because as a part of the Entrepreneur Support Organization, they support our FAST program. So I'm going to start with Josh. So Josh Nickel-Caddy is the Director of Innovation and Technology Program for the University of Nebraska at Omaha with their Nebraska Business Development Center. As a part of his work, Josh oversees our federal and state technology partnership program for the state of Nebraska. The goal of this program is to increase the number of SBIR, STTR proposals. I will add successful proposals and the number of SBIR, STTR awards to innovative small businesses in supporting their commercialization. Thanks for joining, Josh. And last, but definitely not least, Amy Whitney. Dr. Amy Whitney is the director of the University of North Dakota Center for Innovation. She is focused on leading the UND Center for Innovation to the next level by using her entrepreneurial and creative problem-solving skills and background in town-grown relationship building. She oversees a vibrant center supporting entrepreneurs, students, and faculties in the Grand Forks and across North Dakota. So, panelists, thank you all for joining. Again, to the audience, please feel free to start to enter your questions in. We do want this to be a Q&A. So when we're thinking about, fueling innovation through programs like America's Seed Fund or through other initiatives and activities, right? We do have a shared focus in terms of getting new innovators an opportunity to sort of start, grow, and expand their technology-based businesses. So given your organization, I'm going to ask each panelist, and I'll start with Mary, then we'll go Josh, then Amy, to really, one, just talk a little bit more about your organization, but try to answer this question. What are you actually solving for through your programs or your initiatives? Right. Mary, I'll start with you.
Thank you so much, Eric, and good afternoon, everybody. So some of you, I'm guessing, might not have even heard of Barta before or be aware of what we do as an organization. And our funding mechanisms are a little bit different from the SBIR, STTR programs, but as a government group, we do offer non-dilutive funding. So I'd love to introduce the goal of our organization and then talk a little bit more about the particular program that I manage. So Barta is the Biomedical Advanced Research Development and Authority. We are part of Health and Human Services, and support ASPR, which is the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response. So as that name suggests, that group is all about preparing for, responding to, and recovering from public health emergencies and other types of disasters. And we specifically support ASPR by leveraging public-private partnerships, so partnering with companies like many of you in the audience, to develop medical countermeasures, so things like vaccines, diagnostics, therapeutics, and medical devices. And Barta supports innovation from the very earliest stages through advanced research and development and even FDA clearance. And sometimes we even purchase some of the products that we sponsor for the National Strategic Stockpile. So we have different divisions in Barta that are devoted to kind of different categories of threats, maybe infectious diseases, seaborne threats, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, kind of the whole gamut of potential threats. But my division is called DRIVE, the Division of Research, Innovation, and Ventures. And we focus on supporting the earliest stages of technology and entrepreneurship. With that, it kind of in context, to answer Eric's question, what problem are we trying to solve? Within the Accelerator Network, one of our big goals is de-risking the business side of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So lots of these government groups, we give out non-dilutive funding. That's all about de-risking the science, the technologies. But we also really need to de-risk that business side of the commercialization process. And that's the role of accelerators. So there are a lot of scientists, entrepreneurs who know a lot about their technology, but not so much about developing a business. So that's what the accelerators do. They impart that knowledge and teach those valuable lessons and help entrepreneurs bring products to market.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Mary. Josh?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really had me thinking there. So the Nebraska Business Development Center has kind of various divisions. One is the small business development centers, and then one kind of focuses on government contracting, and then ours is funded from the Small Business Administration to really help with help people navigate the SBIR submission process. And what are we solving for? I think essentially access. There are a lot of inventions, innovative ideas that are coming from the rural part of the state. I mean, if you or the rural part of the United States. I mean, if you are operating a farm in kind of the, I'm going to say the middle of nowhere because I can't think of anything better to say, but that would anger my friends in the central part of Nebraska, and I'm sorry. But if you have to solve that problem yourself, and so there's a lot of inventiveness and things that are happening in the rural part of our country, of specifically the state that I live in, and they don't always know about the funding opportunities and things that are available at the federal level, and then even in Omaha and Lincoln. And so that was really the problem that I think we've been pretty successful at solving, is to really focus on maybe ag tech startups. And then there's been a lot of follow-on like capital, as well as, success then has bred success. So once we kind of get this, a successful core of clients that, within the robotic and ag tech space that are solving a very specific set of problems, you get these follow-on technologies. You're recognizing people that can help you solve a problem that you also are trying to solve, or, could help you scale up your business and things after a certain point. And so that's really where I think that that's what we have really tried to solve for. And then the the ecosystem partners have really followed, have really worked with us in the state of Nebraska. So Invest Nebraska then formed a group called the Combine, which is an accelerator specifically for ag tech. Now there's a venture fund that's specifically focused on funding early stage ag tech, Grit Road Partners, I believe, that then have also, that has generated a lot of interest within our state, and I think will only become kind of a virtuous circle that was all really fueled, I would say, at least in its initial stages, by the SBIR program, and then specifically USDA SBIR.
Wonderful. Josh, thanks so much. I appreciate you sort of lifting up the ag tech component and the fact that, hey, these innovators and opportunities are broad, including in our rural areas, and how SBIR is sort of serving as a center to many of that broader ecosystem development. So we definitely are going to revisit some of those aspects. Amy, what are you all solving for? Tell us a little bit about the UND and what you're solving for.
Yeah, so thank you, Eric. The UND Center for Innovation is North Dakota's first and oldest entrepreneurial incubator. And I think similar to Josh, we operate in a pretty rural landscape here in North Dakota. And, really, I was smiling when Mary was talking, because we actually hear a lot of our role and we're solving for is de-risking those technologies and really helping the entrepreneurs think through not just the expertise that they bring to the table with their technologies, but really helping them de-risk the business opportunity and what is that use case for this great innovation that they've brought to the table. And so a lot of our coaching models here, whether it's our Runway Accelerator, or we're working with partners such as Generator, or our state economic development partners and our small business development center partners, our innovation center we are the go-to resource for de-risking those technologies and those use case applications, and really helping those innovators think through what is the business model that's going to be the most effective, and then connecting them to either community resources within our very wide entrepreneurial ecosystem that we have across the state. Or is it that we're connecting you to the capital resources? And that's the exciting piece for us with America's Seed Fund and the SBIR and STTR opportunities, and being a FAST center for North Dakota, is we have the ability to have some pretty unique partnerships in some very specific industry sectors that are important to North Dakota. So, we're solving for, just like our Josh and the networks in Nebraska around agriculture. North Dakota is an agricultural state. We also do a lot in the energy sector here in North Dakota. We're solving for innovations in that space. We also do a lot with national security and autonomous solutions generally, especially in the aerospace and space domains as well. And then another really exciting opportunity for us here in North Dakota is we're really looking to solve for challenges in rural health and rural communities, and how autonomous solutions can transform rural living and rural lifestyles. And because, we have an opportunity here in North Dakota, here at UND, where we have the medical school for the state, and we have a lot of activity in senior population healthcare as well. So really spending some time working in those, subject areas that are important to our economy, and really promoting economic development, but also finding ways to celebrate and enhance the innovation that's happening where we have a lot of talent in sectors that are important to the Northern Plains.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, I think Mary and I, we have a little easier since we are federal employees. Our agencies have a specific mission, right? We don't have to worry about our market fit within the agencies. But Amy and Josh, I really do appreciate how you're sharing that when you're thinking about your ecosystem of those different programs, it is focused on what that area brings, right? Mm-hmm. What the capacity is within those particular areas. So building on that, I often learn from models or examples, right? So can you all share either a highlight an example of either an engagement model, right? How you're identifying these members in your ecosystem who you're supporting, or how you're demonstrating the growth or building of that ecosystem, or a program or an initiative you're executing to sort of address that ecosystem. So, right, I know you all do a lot of different things. So I'm really giving you a platform here to sort of highlight one or two to really convey how you're actually doing the work. So I'm going to start with Josh, then we'll go Amy, then Mary.
Okay, so I have one example that is kind of a regional, and it's not really a formalized partnership, but the Kaufman Foundation a couple years ago, their focus traditionally had been Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas, the MINC corridor, to fund innovation ecosystem projects in those 4 states. And so one of the areas of focus was SBIRs. How do we increase that number, or how do we increase the number of those within our region? And so that was a kind of a formalized group. And then one of the working groups, we all just kind of got along through the pandemic. We met, every quarter or so. So my FAST counterpart in Kansas and in Iowa, we would just talk routinely on a Zoom call. We thought, well, just because the initiative's over from Kaufman, maybe we just catch up, because we have sometimes frustrations with clients, for example, that it feels like we can't, that people in the rest of our office don't necessarily understand that struggle and in a way that we do, or there's a policy change with SBIR that no one else really understands or cares about, and we very deeply did. And so that has been an informal kind of information sharing network among people with kind of a regional interest and similar sometimes when it comes to setting goals or whatever, I'm sure at the national level, it looks like our goals are somewhat modest compared to some of our more populated states. And so then to kind of have a listening session among people that are also in, Kansas or Missouri that say, a growth of, 6 new submissions or whatever is actually pretty incredible given the population density that we're working with or something. And so that has been really a very helpful kind of informal network that's been formalized a little bit as the SBIR road tour, for example, came through our region. We did a lot more kind of planning with each other so that it felt like more of a cohesive week so that we could prepare people in a similar way. And then if someone from Omaha, for example, couldn't make it to the Lincoln event, they could go to Des Moines and still feel like, there was a kind of a continuity of care or something that was all possible. So, I mean, it kind of started informal and it remains kind of a pretty informal monthly call. But there are times when we kind of collaborate on things that each of, that we specialize in. So Nebraska with ag tech is kind of, has an area of expertise or an emerging area of expertise. And then that's true with, Oklahoma with Department of Defense and some things like that. And so then we've added Oklahoma since, so shout out to anyone from Oklahoma. It's near and dear to my heart now, wasn't always. And so that's something that has been really a useful thing so that we can defer to their expertise. Aviation and things in Kansas is something that's very helpful. And so we oftentimes maybe send clients down that way for specialized assistance that we wouldn't otherwise be able to offer. So that's one example. Within the state, I think a lot of it really, as we would apply for grants, that's a good opportunity for us to arrange listening sessions, and you just kind of invite everybody and see who shows up. So I'm kind of notorious for just getting a Zoom link in a calendar invite and then sending an email and see who has the time and accepts it. And if it's 2 weeks out or more, that's about how far out I'm booked. And so they probably don't have anything else on their calendar from, 1 to 2:30 on a Friday afternoon. And so, give them a couple pre-reads like the RFA for the upcoming, for an upcoming proposal, and then kind of talk out what has worked, what hasn't in kind of our, in our ecosystem, where are the gaps, and trying to identify those. So that has been really helpful then as I either go to renew FAST from one year to the next to talk through what were the, kind of the missed opportunities, or where is our continuity of care again kind of falling apart? Where does that customer journey, where is it not working? Who needs, funding where? If that's the problem, is it more of a customer issue? Things like that. What are the programs that we're offering? And are those useful? Should we sunset certain programs, and should we bring other ones on board? And so that's usually where we kind of have a whether it's Zoom or in person, kind of a listening session for an hour and a half, and then kind of see who's actually willing to do something with those ideas in the follow-up.
Josh, I'm so glad you went in that direction, right? Especially in terms of that ecosystem engagement, even regionally. I think one of the reasons we've had this sort of third annual Innovation Ecosystem Summit is to sort of force that type of, collaboration, where often different organizations, they're doing their thing, but when you share ideas, bounce ideas, talk about different initiatives, look for areas to partner, just learn from each other, it really does sort of elevate all. So I'm glad you shared that, Josh. Thank you. Amy.
Yeah, Eric, thank you for that question. And, when we think about defining our ecosystem here in North Dakota, there's a few ways that we do that. And, we've got, and I'll use an example around our autonomous industry sector and how that actually becomes an ecosystem that's greater and has multiple touch points across industry sectors. We have some very unique opportunities here in North Dakota where we have something called a Vantis network, which is building out to be a statewide beyond visual line of sight system where autonomous systems, UAS, uncrewed aerial systems. We have, the opportunity to fly here in North Dakota. We're a really rural state. We've got a lot of airspace where we can be flying. And really, this region has become a national proving ground for autonomous technologies. And so we've got this tremendous set of resources here where you can use our region to test those technologies. And so what that's become for us is not just a North Dakota network of partners, both entrepreneurial serving organizations like my own, where we get to give you some of that business consulting around how do you really truly become a sustainable, viable, feasible business, but how do you actually validate your technologies? What are some of the actual, investment capital opportunities in this region, both in North Dakota, but even in multiple states, right? In the Northern Plains. Often, we have the ability to have touch points across multiple states, similar to Josh, where we can connect you not only to using, say our resources to get business consulting and validate your technology, but maybe there's use cases and partners in other states in this region of the country that you have the opportunity to connect with. So, that's really important for us when we think about an ecosystem. I like to say here, we have a culture of yes up here in North Dakota. And we really, truly want to welcome you to come and have those touch points. Whether we're working with our partners, with 50 South Capital, or we're working with our Department of Commerce. But even more exciting, I think, and this is one of our fast partnerships that's really unique for us that we've seen really be helpful, is also taking advantage of, and we do a lot in that national security sector, where our Air Force Base here in Grand Forks has a National Defense Lab designation as an innovation cell. And so we have and we host these monthly pitch events where companies want to come in and pitch their technology for a use case with the Department of Defense, and the Air Force can see a use for that. We can work to fast track an SBIR application to help you think through how you can get access to some of those non-dilutive funds. And, it's been exciting to see our ability to increase our applications and the number of technologies we've been able to see in that space. And, we've recently had a startup where, I think to Josh's point, 1 or 2 or 6 applications increase a year may not seem a lot to some of our larger states, but for a small state like ours, that's huge, right? But one of our successful SBIR applicants who was testing their solution with the base recently became our first, our second Series A, invested startup here for us in North Dakota. And that's exciting for us. And I realize, that may not feel exciting from a numbers perspective for larger states, but for a state like North Dakota, that's a cause for celebration when we get to be able to lift up a really amazing technology in a startup and see that success and see that a partnership where we work with the base and SBIRs and our entire investment community and the village of all of the partners that brought, that to the table have elevated and seen those successes. So, it's really about working together and having that culture of yes.
Wonderful. That's such a great example. And I'll say this, right? I think many people do appreciate the impact that, these, initial first, second, early on investment, or even the increase in the number of SBIRs, where it may be a single digit. But I think people understand that, innovation ecosystems have historically been on the coast. They've been concentrated in different areas. So I look at every state at an individual level. So I do appreciate what I'm learning here from both Nebraska and North Dakota. All right. Mary, do you have an initiative you'd like to share, or an example in terms of how you all are engaging through the Accelerator Network?
Definitely. We're big on building ecosystem programs at Barta as a way to reach companies that we would like to partner with, and just being able to, support the health security network in general. So I want to mention a few. I know we want to save some time for Q&A, Eric, so I'll try to just touch on the main points. But certainly, since I manage the Barta Accelerator Network, want to tell a little bit about what we do and how we engage with companies. Currently, we've had a model where we partnered with 13 different accelerator programs around the country, and we asked them to source companies in our mission space and support them with wraparound services, startup focused curriculum, mentorship on both the technical and the business side. And also, we hope that they would be able to bring companies into our funded programs. One of the big ones is called the Easy BAA. You could almost think of it kind of like the range of phase 2 SBIR, but it's a different structure where we do milestone-based awards, and we do have a cost share component. But it's a really exciting time for the Accelerator Network, because we are greatly expanding the network over the past year, over the next year, and launching 5 different hubs based on specific technology areas. So one for diagnostics and medical devices, one for therapeutics and vaccines, one for enabling technologies, one for digital health tools, and the 5th is for special populations, which does include some low resource settings that we've kind of touched on during the session today. And we're asking them to provide those typical wraparound accelerator services, source and support companies. But we also have a new funded opportunity. So it's going to be kind of like mini grants that the hubs will be able to give out. So in the range of $50,000 to $200,000, kind of like that, similar to the phase 1 SBIR range, to really help companies get to that next step in funded product developments. And then we're also looking for some rapid response capabilities, because we're the organization that addresses public health emergencies. So that's really exciting. I dropped some links into the chat if you want to learn more about the new Accelerator Network. But just to briefly touch on a couple of other ecosystem programs. So that's our ecosystem of accelerators and all that they do. We also have an ecosystem of incubators through a partnership with Johnson & Johnson Innovations J Labs. And so we leverage their global ecosystem of innovation hubs that support startup companies with primarily incubator space. And that's called the Blue Knight program. And then one more big ecosystem program that we have is Barta Ventures. And so this is actually our one dilutive funding mechanism at Barta. And we do this through an investment partner. But what we're building here is an ecosystem of investors. So we've kind of talked about de-risking technology, de-risking business development. Here is where we are de-risking investment in health security, because it's not necessarily the most popular area of investment. Thanks.
Wow. Wonderful, wonderful suite. I mean, you really are going across the entire spectrum. You're building the ecosystem of incubators, the ecosystem of accelerators, the investment arm, and now you're going to have the ability to do some of these mini grants for the entrepreneurs. So I am so glad you're able to share those. Thank you so much, Mary. I think at this time, what we're going to do is take a look at the chat to see if there are any questions from the attendees that we can address. Give me a second. I'll just sort of scroll through. One question I saw earlier was really around a company in terms of they're saying, hey, if I have a technology, but it has a very specific or unique use case, right? Yeah. So what if a company has developed a first of its kind technology? There's a funding is only offered for something with a specific purpose or discipline. So I guess I'll phrase it this way, right? So I guess Josh, Amy, through your fast roles, you're obviously going to ultimately be engaging a lot with companies in terms of their different technologies, trying to figure out their opportunities for funding there. How would you approach someone who's coming to you saying, hey, I think this is a first of a kind, but I don't think there's an opportunity where this fits with funding from a particular agency? How would you just approach that? Amy, can we start with you?
Sure. Yeah. That's such a great question, Scott. And really, my first approach to that would be to do like we do with any of our innovators who come in from that de-risking perspective. And we would work with you to do what we call some customer discovery activities, where you think about what are some of those potential use cases for that first of its kind technology. And then we spend some time problem solving with you as to who might have a need that you could be solving with that technology. And while you're doing that, we would then also think about what would be a business model to get you to actually moving that technology forward as a business. And that's a lot of the conversations we have, because it is not uncommon for us to be seeing some of those first of the kind technologies and doing something that might be a little outside the box. And really, when you think about building a business, you have to understand how might this be applied, in what ways, and who might I be solving the problem for? And then from there, once you understand that, it's much easier to think about what funding opportunities and pathways are going to make the most sense for the technology and the commercialization of that technology. Because sometimes it might be hard capital, right, where you're actually doing venture investments. Sometimes an SBIR or those types of opportunities might be the best pathway. And then other times it might be that your customer for that first of a kind technology could be a licensing partner and another organization who would pay you in a different way from, an alternative commercialization strategy. So a lot of that first of its kind work is really about spending some time upfront doing some de-risking and thinking about that use case and building a business model first before seeking the funding path, because it's really important to understand who are you solving the problem for and who has the greatest need for that. And then the funding opportunity and pathway will become clear as you answer those questions.
Wow, wonderful response. Thank you so much. Very comprehensive. So actually, I'm going to see if there's other questions, because I really do think that covered the spectrum in terms of how you should think about that, those different ways you can try to identify where you'll land. So another question we have is, what are some government funding for accelerators and funds working with underrepresented founders? So I guess, Mary, I would ask you, and then I'll also follow up. But through Barta, and when you're looking at sort of the suite, are there any particular elements focusing on underserved populations, or is it really more so the tech and the mission space focus?
Yeah. And Eric, could I just do a very quick answer to the previous question? Because I think that I'm so glad that was asked with as far as Barta too, because a lot of the times we are looking for broad platform technologies or agnostic technologies, because it's not likely that a business is going to make it just on, here's a product in case of a pandemic, right? So often they have a platform for addressing chronic disease or cancer, and developing a product for us might be a second, third, or fourth use case. But we're really open to those broader technologies. Underrepresented founders. So we did actually, with one of our accelerators, we did sponsor a cohort that was Generator, just for underrepresented founders. So it's something that we're really aware of as an organization. Something we'll definitely be thinking about as we build out this next expanded iteration of the Accelerator Network.
Good. I guess I'll add from a SBA perspective, one of the things we've been doing through our Growth Accelerator Fund competition, which is prize-based, is really trying to incentivize awards and prizes to incubators, accelerators, those in this ESO community with a focus on underserved as well. So that's another area I would encourage you to keep a lookout for, because we really do want to grow the broader apparatus to make sure that these all innovators, accelerators, or incubators are being supported. All right, see if there's any other questions. All right. I am not seeing any, or there may be a delay. Okay, so here's one from Marcos. We're a digital cardiovascular health company with some great use cases, developed a business model and interested in sharing with the office to see if there's something that aligns well. How do we begin the journey? So I think I'm going to ask this question actually of all the panelists, because I think they all have a different role, right? So Mary, I'll start with you in terms of whether it's through through the Barta network, a entity like this, how will they start that journey to see if this is something that can solve one of your use cases?
Yeah, definitely. I'm so glad somebody asked that, because this should all be about how can you actually engage with our organizations, right? Instead of us talking about how great we are, how great our programs are. So definitely, I dropped the links. Definitely the website is a good place to start so that you can look at the different priorities and programs and see where you might align. And when you do reach out to, an info at whatever program, that goes to a person who will often then pull together the right group of people for a market research call. So, finding out where the alignment is, setting up a market research call, but always do that when we are really excited to talk to companies. So you never want to just drop in an application without actually talking to the program first. And if you think that you might be too early stage for one of these programs, you can still talk with the managers and get an idea of exactly what they need to see before you might be eligible for a funding opportunity.
Wonderful, wonderful. Josh, I know this is not ag tech, but if a company was sort of similarly wondering how they would start a process, if they already had a general sense of use cases, how would you all engage if they were in Nebraska?
Yeah, and I wanted to just reinforce what Mary just said about funding decisions are made by people, at least so far. We'll see how that changes in the future, but engaging early and often with program managers and things, it makes a huge difference. So I would say reach out to that network. So, I mean, we have had success with ag tech, but we get clients of all kinds. And we would take the meeting, a 30-minute intake where we discuss what about the technology, the potential customer segments or whatever do you already know, and what is your need? Is your need funding? Is your need more customers? How far along in the development path are you? And just kind of a top level assessment about kind of how far along are you. If it is a fit for SBIR, we talk about that. If it's a private equity fit, we discuss that. The great thing about a state like Nebraska is that there really aren't that many people in the ecosystem to engage with. So, I mean, if it's an interesting technology, you make a call or send an email, and you can speak with that person and get a fairly straightforward answer about whether or not they would fund you or not. So I think that part can be really helpful. Again, the downside being, of course, that there aren't that many people to shop it around with, at least in this state. The other thing, I guess this is about the only place it fits in terms of a plug, is Nebraska has this thing called the Business Innovation Act. So it funds academic R&D if there's further scientific things or technical questions that still need to be answered. The academic R&D actually goes to a small business to then fund academic research around that idea, the basic science part of it, as well as a prototyping grant that requires some match. And then also it will match your SBIR as well as pay or reimburse for phase 0, kind of developing your grant proposal. So the state of Nebraska is trying to incentivize as best as possible with wraparound services and kind of funding mechanisms. And I know that Nebraska is not, fully unique in that way. And so there are, I'm sure, state resources that would also be more than happy to hear what it is you're doing and how to help you.
Wonderful. Amy?
Yeah, I think similar to both Mary and Josh, really the first step, if you were interested in getting some support from an organization like the Center for Innovation as an entrepreneurial support organization, is to just give us a call, reach out by email. When all that information is on our web pages, and it starts with us having a conversation with you about what are your goals, what do you want to do, what are the resources, that we might be able to provide for you in doing that. And then, from an SBIR perspective, thinking about, are there ways we can help give you any guidance that our fast technical assistance offerings provide, whether that's, some technical support, helping you make introductions, what does that look like? A lot of it happens in that first intake conversation. Sometimes as an early stage startup, maybe you need some help with validating your technology, or you want connections to some talent resources, right? So what does that look like for you? All of that is part of that initial conversation, and then we can guide accordingly after that initial conversation.
Wonderful. So we have enough time for maybe a 45-second last bit of advice, call to action, promotion, or the thumbs up, meaning I've covered it all. So I'm just going to go, I'm going to start with you, Josh. Then we'll go Amy, and then conclude with Mary. And if we've covered it, feel free to say, I've covered it.
I've covered it.
I've covered it.
Basically, I won't. No one will have any time to talk about. Have time to talk. Go for
it. Amy?
I think the big takeaway for me when we think about ecosystems is, it really is important for you to reach out, right, and to create those connections and be a part of that network. And you have to take advantage of the network, right? The network's not going to come to you. And so really a lot of it, just like with an entrepreneur who needs to get it done by doing the work, it's the same for us in building our ecosystems and creating our networks. It is, it's all on us to create that network and to be good partners for each other. And I think that's an exciting piece of this, especially in the space with the SBA and all of our resources that we have together is, we truly are, I'm happy to send somebody to Josh and Mary, right? If that's the right place for them to be. And I would just say, know that that's a network that we do work collaboratively, even across our own organizations where we need to. And that's a big piece and a takeaway that I think is important for everybody.
Wonderful. Mary?
Yeah, I think, to kind of reiterate what Amy said, right? It's important for us to have this network as funders as well, right? Because it's not about we're not trying to hoard people to fund. We want to see their companies be successful. So that may mean that they go in and out of these different funding programs. So it's important for us to have our interagency network. But I think, just as a last point, as I said before, please reach out. We'd love to chat with you and support you. We have a lot of different types of services and funding opportunities in Barta. So thanks so much for joining, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you all to the audience, and thank you all to our panelists. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone.
Amy.
Yep. Bye, friends.